Brown 45! Brown 45! Hot, 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 hot!
Welcome back to week 7 of the Ball and Chain. Back in the studio with me is my co-host, the Chain, Cooper Rona. Cooper, how does it feel to be back on the best Sports Center set in America?
Man, I'll tell you, I missed it. Watching last week's episode, beautiful to be in the audience's seat for once. But I gotta tell you, some people just aren't cut out for the spotlight and for the fast-paced, hard-hitting commentary that comes on a show like this.
You're telling me. That's why I need you across from me. This is a tennis match. This is an all-star tennis match here.
Goodness. Brian, this week was a bit of a slugfest.
It was.
One of the lower scoring weeks in the league as a whole. Just the NFL decided to poo-poo it a little bit.
Yeah.
Some pretty incredulous trash talk in a few group messages. Some nail-biters of games. We're talking less than a point. We'll get into those more, I'm sure, a little bit later.
I'm sure we will.
Start us out. For those that missed it or just want to hear it again, what were some of the big highlights, headlines, if you will, from this week?
Of course. Shocking scores from around the league. Teams are up, teams are down, teams are all around. But up first, I got Waddle Housed. Waddle Housed. The Silly Willies go out there and they drop the ball to the Waddle House. I think this is more of a story about the Waddle House than it is about the Silly Willies. We've been saying he's going to come back at some point. He's got 2 in a row now. You better watch out.
What a way to get his foot in the door. Very reminiscent of the Florida man last year.
Yep.
Taking down your team at the time who was undefeated.
Yep.
It's exciting to see. I like to see a little more competition in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to come back to that game with a different headline. We're gonna bounce around a bit. You talked about tennis.
Of course.
Look, I hate to do it to you, but I turn over that paper. Austin Ekeler, disappointing return. Monday Night Football, Cowboys versus the Chargers. 2 teams you hold near and dear to your heart. Ekeler only puts up 10.2 points, a mere 2.2 points more than Brandon Aubrey, the kicker who won the game for the Cowboys, won the match for LeBron's third leg, a absolutely razor-thin 99.76 to 99.4. Brian, I have a single question for you. I'm not going to ask what went wrong. I'm not going to ask you to walk me through it. What did Jared Goff have to say, sitting on the bench in place of Brock Purdy, putting up, I believe, 22 points, and what would have won you the game?
You know what would have won me a game? Playing anybody but my goddamn kicker, Tyler Bass, who missed 2 field goals. You make 1 field goal and win the game. I digress. Jared Goff, not happy in the locker room, admittedly, not very happy. He said, I won you that championship last year. You know what I did for you, and you put some other bum in there instead of me? Brock Purdy? No. I want to apologize on air to Jared Goff. You are our franchise QB, and you will see him.
Who's starting week 7?
You see him on my team next week, so we'll see. We're going to move to another team, a team that has been hit with some serious woes. And I think it all traces back to one singular moment when the manager's hubris may have gotten out of control. His confidence was taking control. And my headline is MIC. But in parentheses, it stands for, man, I'm cursed. I'm cursed. I'm absolutely cursed. Ever since he put that message in the group chat, or not in the group chat to me, he's put up 102, 87, 115, and 72 versus the Florida man most recently, earning him his second beat report. That's 94 points a game from the guy.
Oh, man.
Listen, God willing, he's trying to make a better team. You got to give him credit, but you got to exercise some of those demons in the child killer's locker room.
To tee up something that's coming next week in terms of an efficiency rating, I'll let you know that MIC manager has had an efficiency rating of a 45 over the last 2 weeks out of 100.
Oh, Wow, interesting. I wonder
I'll
how.
say no more. Stay
wonder how
tuned
that
for exactly
compares.
what else that entails.
Wow, Cooper, what do you got next?
Yeah. Going back to that top dog that fell, not Devontae's dogs, to be clear, but
Me.
headline: Arnold Schwarzenegger impression gone wrong. We are all very familiar with the 1987 cult classic Running Man, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
I will tell you, the Silly Willies had a shameful rendition of the film in their Week 6 matchup and their first loss of the season, scoring under 100 points. They had 4 running backs on that team that totaled 7 points across the 4 of them. I will say Aaron Jones, James Conner out, DeMercado, and David Montgomery totaled 7 points.
It begs the question. People are talking about the Lions. Have they broken the curse? I'm asking the Willies. Is it same old Willies? Is it same old Willies? The injuries, they're back, and they're right on cue. Is it the same old Willies, or will he persevere?
I really hope not. I had some conversations with the manager today. He's looking to mix up the team a little bit.
Yep. So is that TikTok?
Empty a couple of those hospital beds. Find a little bit more depth in the roster. So excited to see what comes in Week 7.
That's good. And Cooper, boy, have I got a banger for you on the back page. You're familiar with Christianity, are you not?
Intimately so.
My headline is this: Luke 1:19. Do you know the verse? Let me read it to you. The angel answered and said to him, I am Gabriel, who stands in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and bring you this good news. There could only be one Gabriel. There could only be one Gabriel. Gabriel Davis, with just the dirtiest win ever. He dropped that ball. I swear he did.
He did.
He's Logan right to the end. He had huge Gabe Davis game, fumbling away the win at first. Just wait until the fourth quarter to get the win. I've seen it all before. I've read this storybook.
I wanted to see Gabe Davis not make another catch. I really did.
Me too.
I'm glad LA Ligma got their win.
Absolutely.
Huge for the morale of that team, especially with the injuries they've had this season.
Mm-hmm.
But
6. Wild.
Look, a W is a W.
It is.
At the end of the day. And an L is an L in some other people's cases. There was a hotly contested, highly debated coaching metric that you presented late last season. There's been rumblings that you've brought something similar to the table today?
Similar and completely different all at once.
Fantastic.
Completely legitimate, peer-approved, absolutely correct coaching metric.
Yes.
It's back.
Yes, all of the things.
It's revamped for this year. Cooper, as you can recall, last year's was points per move over 2 times wins weighted. I think that was wrong. The viewers can see it up on the screen. Thanks to our beautiful editor. This year, we've been in the lab. We've been cooking up something way more complex and way more accurate. So try and pay attention. This is your updated coaching metric.
Please, give it to me.
You've got starting points minus the league average points divided by 5. So that's your points minus how many points the league has scored by average divided by 5. Plus
in that given week? Or total?
No, overall.
Okay.
Plus wins minus losses divided by 2. Plus moves minus the average moves made by managers. And let me clarify on the moves. It's not the moves you see on ESPN. It is the new players played each week. Yes, I went in and I checked how many players are played each week on each roster. Because you can pick some boy up and put him on your bench and not play him. That affects nothing. I want boys who are played in the game. Now that we've had some time to digest that, I'm sure
I have a couple of questions before you get into it.
Of course.
The points minus average points divided by 5.
Yes.
What is the 5 accounting for there?
The 5 is simply a weighted value. I would like to give more weight to 0.4. A lot of people will say that, doesn't the draft count for the amount for your coaching metric? It's not shown up here. The points you put forward every week is the most important metric here. However, the focus is on the moves made or the players played.
I see.
We have taken a
follow-up question. Question. New players. New compared to the week prior or new to that team on the season.
The week prior. Who's new
So
in the line?
if you're swapping your flex between 2 players every week, that's a new player each week.
It is. It
I
absolutely is.
see.
That is a coaching
see.
decision that matters.
Okay.
We have taken the stance.
That's going to hurt the Tinglers, I'll be honest.
We have taken the stance that more moves is a positive thing. In an effort to create more trades, more activity,
We do want
more
all of
moves
those.
is good, as opposed to a
Yes.
stagnant manager.
Yes.
It's the worst thing you can be. A bad stagnant manager is the worst thing you can be. That being said, here are your updated coaching polls. Coming in, I'll start from the bottom. Coming in at number 12, it's the MIC Child Killers at negative 15.57. Listen,
There's negatives?
there's negatives. It's all weighted against an average, so there's negatives.
Oh, because his points 4 is below
Absolutely. Negative 15.57.
Sorry. I need a clarifying question because I can't see the
Of
visual
course.
up above all of
Of
our
course.
listeners' heads.
Of course.
Are the 3 segments you mentioned, the divided by 5, the divided by 2, and the moves one, are they multiplied or are they added?
The divided by 5 is divided by 5, obviously.
No,
but
so
all of
that's
these,
in the parentheses
all of
by
these are
itself.
added together. They're
They're
added.
added. Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
With different weights, they're added together.
I can't wait to see this visually and have it be completely different than what's in my head.
Our viewers are in paradise right now. Jimmy, good, but the guy, have you seen his points for him? He's got 599. He gets credit for making a lot of moves, but like it can't help him out that much. Next up, I'm sorry to do it to you, but it's you. It's you at negative 14.68. Not too far behind.
Okay.
Next up, we've got the manager of the New York TikTok guy. He's sitting at about 12.49 negative, of course. I mean, the
Does
guy's
anyone
not.
go positive?
Don't worry, we'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not
Okay.
making moves. He doesn't have a whole lot of points. He doesn't have a whole lot of wins.
He did just solicit to the entire league that all players are available for trade.
If he makes some trades, that will affect his score positively. I'd like to emphasize that.
Yes.
Next up, we've got my own flesh and blood, the Chief himself, Chief Padawan, sitting at a negative 8.91. So we're getting up there a little bit.
Okay, bit of a jump there.
Right in front of him is the LA Ligma FC at negative 8.54. Tough for him. Very
Sorry,
tough for him.
what was Chief Padawana's score?
Negative 8.91.
Thank you.
Of course. He's made a lot of moves, the Ligma man, of course, and that saved him a little bit, but not a whole lot of wins, and not great on the points for there.
Yep.
Next up, we got JD at number 7.
Okay.
Very interesting at negative 4.21, so we're nearing league average. Next up, we've got perhaps the most average manager on this list. Perhaps that will change, but it is the Florida man, sitting at negative 1.35. Negative 1.35 being fairly average. I mean, the guy's made league average moves. He's at 3-3, and he's only 9 points below league average on scores. Sure, what are you gonna do? Next up, sitting at the 5, we've entered the top half. We've got Matt, the owner of I don't even know what his team's name is anymore. You got
Kirkland signature.
Yep, whatever. You got him sitting at 1.994, so we're finally in the positive. And then next up, a person who you may think may be higher, LeBron's third leg, sitting at
Not many moves, I suppose. Not many moves.
5.33, has not made a lot of moves. In fact, that negatively impacts his score. Now, we'd like to emphasize, not making moves is not a detriment to your overall team. If that's what you're doing, by all means. This metric measures the coach's effect on the team across the season. That's what we're trying to measure here. Doesn't mean you have a bad team. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. Doesn't mean we don't like you. It just means I'm just measuring how your moves have affected your wins and your points. That's it.
And
That's
yet we still haven't heard the manager who's made the least moves in the league. So I'm curious to see how that shakes out.
Of course. Well, Brett's tied with that. Actually, it is on my metric. It's Brett. He's only got 6 new guys played over the course of 6 weeks.
Wow.
Next up,
some might call that complacency.
Perhaps, but I mean, the man's 5-1. What are you going to do?
I'm going to beat him
What
this
are you
week.
gonna do? Not a measure
Christian
of the winner.
McCaffrey's
but
not going to play.
Measure of the coach's activity. Next up, we got the Goobers at sitting at 8.99, nearly breaking 9 points there. Very good for him. He's very active. He's got 12 new guys played each week. He's got, he's well above the points average. And then next up, we've got me sitting at 20.34.
It's a big jump.
It is. I got about 79 more points than the league average. That's helping me, and I got 14 new players a week. It's helping. And then next up, there was only one man it could be. He hasn't made a whole lot of moves, and his score was negatively affected, but man, he is 152 points above league average. He
scores points.
Except for this week. Props to the Waddle House. He's sitting at, let me say his name. The Silly Willies are sitting at 20.03.
Wow.
Well above everybody else.
Brian, fascinating. I'm sure everyone is going to agree completely with that ranking.
I see no reason for them not to.
Tell our listeners, go a little bit deeper. Who had the most moves? Who's had the most moves per your new player metric?
Of course, it's the MIC Child Killers with 15 new players played.
Wow!
Over the course of so many weeks, and he got a big bonus.
Most of his players can't last a full game before they get injured.
That's tough, and you see, that's where it shows up in the points for. His points for drawing him down so much.
Yep.
It's tough. And I'd also like to explain that divided by 2 on the wins minus losses.
Of course, please.
Wins, it's a little. I don't want to weight wins too much because that brings into account the points against. I want to look at sort of the team as a whole here. We can weight wins. You can't throw them out the window, but they're weighted less.
Fascinating that your ranking kept 1 and 12 the same. I think that speaks to the validity of it.
I think so too. I think so too. And you know what I think it really says? It speaks to the Silly Willies' dominance.
It does. We have many things to speak to the Silly Willies' dominance. I'll tell you that much.
That's what I think it says. People who I think will move up the list. John at 6. I think he'll move up. I think Caden will move up, sitting at number 8, based on those trades. And just to be frank with you, Cooper, I think you're going to stay exactly where you are.
I've been plagued by indecisiveness all season.
You have.
I think I have one of the deeper benches in the league.
You do.
And so playing that flex spot, having a few different receivers who can all show up in different weeks has, I'm sure, hurt me via your metric. So I respect it. We're working on consolidating the locker room currently, so I could see a second half rebound.
Interesting. Perhaps I'll be wrong, proven wrong, such as the Adam Thielen experiment that I was so horribly wrong on.
Speaking of players that you think might drop off here soon, no longer Adam Thielen. We are T-minus 13 days from spooky season Halloween.
Of course.
In honor of this, let's take a little trip to the pumpkin patch. Do you want to explain to our listeners what we're looking for in the pumpkin patch?
What are we looking for in the pumpkin patch?
Besides ghouls, ghosts, and goblins.
And goblins, many of you have heard the story of Cinderella where at midnight her carriage will turn back into a pumpkin. We think that these players will turn back into their usual selves, aka the pumpkins. I know I just hammered on you, but my first pumpkin is Darren Waller. My first pumpkin is Darren Waller. He put up 16.6 and then 9.3.
Solid.
I've watched those Giants games. He shows up. He gets about 7 catches in the final 2 minutes of the game and saves the score. Both of these games.
He should have saved the game if the refs called a second pass interference and weren't scared.
You only get one.
I have no good transition to my first pumpkin player. But I will say, a player currently residing on LA Ligma's roster. Drake London.
Oh, that dude's been a gourd. He's been a gourd this whole time.
15 points in week 5, 21 points this past week in week 6.
Oh, is that so?
He was the wide receiver 6 this past week in week 6. On the season, he's wide receiver 31. Oh. I put this up completely to Desmond Ridder playing well for once in his life.
The Riddler?
The Riddler,
yeah. I didn't even know he did that. That's how irrelevant he is to me.
Not sustainable. I mean, Kyle Pitts scored a touchdown. What?
Absolutely not. What the hell is that about? He's had some problems with him in the past, and I think he's going to continue to have some problems with him. It's Joe Burrow.
Yes.
He's got 23 and then 13. He's trending in that direction. He's got a bye week. Some say that will give him time to get healthy, but then the very next week, he's going to get beat up by San Francisco and then the Buffalo Bills.
Ooh.
those are two very tough matchups, and I think
And who's he
That's-
throwing to right now?
good. I don't know.
It's not Jamal. It's Tyler Boyd. He scored 16 points on my bench. That's who he's throwing to.
I wonder what your metric's going to say about that next week.
Stay tuned to find out.
We will. What do you got?
A player that has been passed around a few times thus far in the league, which I think is indicative of their true pumpkin-like nature.
Oh my!
There was a big hoopla about this when this player was picked up after said manager dropped Amari Cooper.
Oh,
Now
oh.
residing on the Florida Man roster, it's Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah.
18.3 points last week. The Florida Man's picked him up. Those 18 points came off of 2 receptions and 85 yards. The most receptions he's had in a single game is 5, and that was
Ooh.
in week 1. Since then, he's gone 4, 0, 3, 2, and 2.
That's not
Alvin-
good.
Alvin Kamara's back. I just don't see how you could possibly have that player on your roster and feel good about it.
Well, he's got Alvin Kamara. For my sake, I hope you're right. I really do. It's DJ Moore. My guy's DJ Moore. my pumpkin is DJ Moore.
We're back to DJ slander.
The manager is going to be absolutely furious. He proved me wrong 2 weeks ago. Then he scored 10 points. And then, you know what I really think is going to do it? Justin Fields is out. With a
Yeah, that's
busted
tough.
finger. Justin Herbert busted his finger, and he couldn't make a throw to save his life in the Dallas game, and it was his non-throwing hand. It's not going to be good for that guy. I mean, he was projected 17 coming off that big week, and he put up 10. I don't see it. I see a pumpkin in my future, or in his future. I see it.
Brian, I got one more pumpkin for you.
Of course.
If you can close your eyes for a moment and think it's November 8th. You've still got that jack-o'-lantern you carved sitting on your front porch. It started to shrivel up a little bit, get kind of droopy.
Mm-hmm.
You're staring at Derrick Henry.
Oh, Derrick Henry.
Nearly 20 points last week. The RB5 in week 6. He is sitting at the RB12 on the season.
Is he?
But his nearly 20 points came off of only 12 carries, 97 yards, over half of which came from a single big run in the touchdown. Without that one play, he's sitting at 8 points.
Yikes.
Tyjae Spears has more carries. He's trending up on the season. It's obvious they're favoring the younger guy for sustainability and long-term sake. Derrick Henry is not a first-round caliber pick player.
No,
And that's where Matt took him.
Mm-hmm. That's an absolute bust.
I think you sell him this week. You get your pension plan, and he has a nice retirement. But he's got to get Derrick Henry off that roster if he wants to stay at 5-1 or similar to what he's been so far this season.
I think you're right. Sell high. Absolutely sell high. Now, previewing our matchup of the week. There it is. There it is. We're picking the MIC Child Killers and Chief Padawan, the Chiefs' first matchup of the week this year. Cooper, interesting game. The Child Killers sitting at 1-5, and the Chiefs sitting at 2-4. If the Child Killers win this, they would have the same record. What does this mean for these teams? What does this game mean?
Brian, I think coming out of last season, both of these managers had a lot going for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Chiefs, young manager, learned a lot throughout the year, finished the year strong in the consolation bracket.
Yeah.
MIC Child Killers finishing really, really strong in the 2022 season.
Yep,
I don't think either of these managers are super pleased with where they're at currently, and it comes down to very different things. As we've talked about, alluded to, the MIC curse. I hate to call it a curse because that puts the blame on something aside from the manager who has just been incompetent.
Ooh.
For Chief Padawan, it's been a little bit more the story of Las Vegas. We've talked about that Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams stack has not done super well for the manager thus far this year, except for a few shining moments. But Brian, I look at this matchup and the predictions. We've got 7 red Qs next to players.
Yeah.
For Chief Padawan, Trevor Lawrence, I believe with a knee injury. DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams. For
Absolutely.
MIC Child Killers, Saquon, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, and Deebo Samuel. all with questionable designations at this very moment.
I think maybe the Silly Willie's medical department got a hold of some of these players. I don't know
There's
what's
something going around the league, and I'm not sure how to explain it, but I have to believe that one of these teams is going to have to roster an unmanned spot.
An unmanned spot?
I don't see how the Child Killers get by without having a zero somewhere in their scorecard, similar to what Silly Willy did earlier in the season and got a W off of it.
And did it. And absolutely did it. The Child Killers can't afford to do that. They need to pull off what the TikTok guy did in week 2 by dropping a guy. This is the moment you need to make that decision.
This is where you drop DJ Moore.
Oh, interesting. Maybe I'll pick him up. I know what I said. Very interesting. I think you're right. I think, one of my keys for the Child Killers, just pray. I know I have a religious overtone with this episode, but he's got to pray. Like, some of these guys got to play. He's got 4 Qs on his starting roster right now. He's got to make the right choices. Is Stafford the right QB? Is the Eagles defense versus Miami the right decision? I don't think so. And then the Chief, obviously the Raiders, and then it's the Chiefs versus my Chargers. So the Chiefs need to have a good connection there. He's got Pacheco with the defense and the kicker. They need to have a good day. That being said, my final score is going to be 97 Child Killers, 112 Chief Padawan. And I think it's just due to his better matchups. That's all.
Yeah. Brian, I think
agree.
this game's going to come down to the kickers.
The kickers, again?
The
You know I
kickers.
have PTSD where that's involved.
Harrison Butker put up, I believe, 18 points last week against the Giants.
That's good.
Clutch Gene hitting some long ones. Meanwhile, Jake Moody, not the man I used to know at Michigan.
Oh, just don't make me upset. It's a phase.
Your heart aches for him.
Oh my goodness.
I just think that's going to be a major difference here. But Brian, at the end of the day, I got to agree with you. I mean, Amari Cooper sitting in the flex spot compared to Deebo Samuel, who has scored less than a point on a game in which he wasn't injured.
That's wild.
Deshaun Watson may be coming back. It's a nagging shoulder injury. Not the purpose of this, I know.
Sure, you know about that. Yeah.
That being said, I see the Chiefs taking this one. Actually outscoring their projections, assuming all their players are healthy, 118.5 to 101.8.
101.8. Not high expectations for the Child Killers this week.
They're breaking 100 for the first time in a while. That's high praise if you ask me with where they're at.
That's not going to win you any championships or stop you from doing any beer miles in this league.
I'm excited for that matchup. I'm excited for many matchups here in Week 7. As we as the Generic Fantasy League and we as Ball and Chain Media continue to establish ourselves, continue to learn both collectively and individually, I think it's the point in the season where we need to start having some of these conversations about what we can do next season, or even with a group-wide unanimous decision to implement this season, some changes that veterans of the fantasy world will be well accustomed to, things that I think make the game better. So I'm going to list off a handful of things. You're welcome to jump in if you have ideas as well. These generally get increasingly more unique or more interesting.
I'd love to hear it.
First one, a skill-based draft order.
A skill-based draft order? And what do you mean by that?
We're not doing some random number generator or rolling a dice. This is ideally all of us meeting up in a physical location, competing in some sort of beer Olympics, physical gauntlet, something that allows us to put our teams on our back to get that 1-1 pick rather than the algorithms of whatever generator Jimmy used.
Very interesting. I believe the Goobers have also produced a monetary draft, I believe it's called. I don't know the name, but we all have a certain amount of money and then players are auctioned off. I think that takes maybe a certain amount of skill and strategy.
Certainly. I personally think that maybe gets a little bit too much in the weeds for the draft day, but that brings up a very similar idea of a free agent acquisition budget for the waivers. Rather than 12th place always have priority, in which that person is always going to pick up players whether their team truly needs them or not, is you are given a designated budget, call it $200 at the beginning of each season. You have that $200 to bid on free agents, waiver wire picks throughout the year.
Yes.
Thoughts?
I like that. I like that a lot. I like incorporating some sort of waiver wire draft strategy such as that. I like that. I like that a lot.
Half point PPR.
I dislike that.
You dislike that.
Why do you say that?
Should Gabe Davis's 3 catches, 21 yards, get him the win in that Sunday night game?
Well, the guy only had how many points? 3-4 points?
He would have had less than half point.
That's true.
Especially when it comes to workhorse running backs compared to those that are in the receiving game. Should a 0-yard catch be worth the same as a 10-yard run?
Wild.
Probably not.
Good point. Good point
Probably
there.
not.
Very good point there.
Curious to know what our audience, what our listeners think.
Of course. Leave a comment down below. What do you think?
Down below.
Get some viewer interaction.
Swipe, tap, subscribe, like.
Smash that subscribe button and that like.
Boom. I think we need a wild card spot.
A wild card spot. How would that work?
A wild card spot. However you want it to work. If we get rid of conferences, the top 5 are based on record, and then the 6th is based on most points in the week prior, or points for in the season. Something that is not record based, but is points for based.
Interesting. I thought you might have meant the 6 and the 7 have to play off for the 6th spot, sort of like the NBA, how they do it.
Ooh, play-in games.
That could be interesting. However, we'd have to adjust the games played and the length of the season. That could be different.
Right.
But
that's the commissioner's job, is to figure out the hard part of it. We are the idea guys.
Right. I'm sure.
Speaking of ideas, I would love a slightly more authoritarian approach to managerial trades.
How so?
Required trade quotas.
Absolutely not. This is a socialist idea. The free market will determine trades and whatever they need. Absolutely not.
We're not reaching equilibrium because we got no supply. There's demand from every manager, and no one's willing to supply players.
That is on the managers that will not supply.
That's all of them.
Actively, a manager with a good team should not be forced to make a trade that they don't want to make. Absolutely not. I stand against it.
It's a suggestion. I'm throwing it out there.
I stand against it.
A captain's pick, you could call it. I'll equate it to rolling double dice in Super Mario Party.
Oh.
In this format, you are each week allowed to pick one player who will receive double their points that week.
Oh,
the caveat, you can only select a player once per season.
Oh my. Oh, very interesting. A superstar.
So you are obviously choosing your superstars, but you are also trying to predict the weeks in which they will have the 40 bombs, the 50 bombs, to turn those into 90 and 100 bombs.
That would be insane.
That would be
That's
insane.
Interesting. That's it. That's a power.
I see some intrigue there.
There is some intrigue there. I think maybe I could roll that into my coaching metrics somehow. That's why I'm interested. All right. For the last one.
Yeah. We got to get down to brass tacks for this last one. I think the point in every fantasy person's life, which they become a man. At what point do we become a dynasty league?
Oh my. I think that would require a whole different setup.
Certainly.
That would be something. That would be something else. You want to do the transition?
I'm throwing it out there as a what if. What would that look like?
Oh my, that would change anything. That would change everything. That's a huge suggestion. And I don't even know what would go into that.
No idea. If I can throw out an even crazier suggestion, which I am not bringing up for this league, but purely out of the own fascination that I learned about it yesterday. A college football style NFL fantasy league in which you are only allowed to draft players. It's a dynasty league.
Oh.
You are only allowed to roster players in the first 4 years of their NFL career. So rookies are considered freshmen. Those in their second year are considered sophomores, so on and so forth. But you are allowed red shirts and medical red shirts.
Oh, wow.
So you could have a player in their 6th year, but if Breece Hall was out for a year, right, he's then coming in as your sophomore rather than as your junior or whatever that may be. It is.
And the draft would go accordingly.
And the draft would go accordingly.
Just
it
with
is.
rookies. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It blew my mind when I heard about it. It's almost a little bit of a snooze fest then, turning back to what our commissioner has done with the generic fantasy league. So at the very least, I hope the audience, the listeners, the managers, and the commissioner himself at the end of the day listen to this, give some feedback, give some commentary, and it sparks fruitful and productive discussion. Because at the end of the day, that is what we as Ball and Chain are here to do. Not just entertain you, but to intrigue you.
Absolutely. We are here for the league.
Brian, that's week 6 recap. Going into week 7, I am so excited.
Ecstatic. Mm-hmm.
Any final words?
Any final words? I'm coming, John.